So without further ado, I am delighted to introduce Thalia Ho, author of Wild Sweetness. And she will be in conversation tonight with Amy Ho, author of Blooms and Baking. Hi, Thalia.
Hi. Hang on. Can you hear and see me okay?
Yes, you're perfect. And hello, Amy.
Hi.
Hi. So for those of you that don't know, Thalia Ho just recently graduated from law school. Huge congratulations. And she is a blogger at Butter and Brioche and all-around Francophile. In her free time, you'll find her spending hours on end in her kitchen, testing recipes, baking decadent treats, exploring cookbooks, and getting lost in the digital world. And Amy Ho is the founder of Constellation Inspiration, a baking blog where she shares her unique desserts. She has been featured in several publications, including Better Homes and Gardens and Country Living. And Amy is the author of Blooms and Baking, and she lives in Vancouver. So Thalia and Amy are going to speak tonight for about 25 to 30 minutes, maybe a little bit longer. And then we will open it up to those audience questions that have been submitted through the Q&A button. So I will go ahead and let you take it away.
Okay, perfect. Well, oh, hang on. Okay, cool. Sorry, Zoom is just not the best platform for this, of course. Like, I wish we could be all doing this in person. And
I know. I feel like we try to schedule like a in-person baking date for the last like 2-3 years. And we were supposed to meet up this year, but obviously not possible this year, but I'm so happy to be doing this with you. Congrats on your pub day. I have my copy right here. I've flipped through it so many times already. It's absolutely beautiful. And it's so wonderful to like I knew you were working on this book for quite a few years, and to see it come into fruition, it's a really beautiful journey, and I'm really happy you're sharing it with us.
Thank you. Yeah, there's no one else like I'd rather be doing this with, not to turn it into like a massive love fest already, but Amy and I have been saying like we're going to collab on something for like 5 years. So this is it, and I feel like it'll take us another like 5 years to get to this point. But yeah, so today we're just going to be hanging out and decorating cakes. We're doing the white rose cake from my cookbook. It's in the second chapter, which is called Floral, which is a spring chapter. So it's perfect if you're in the US at the moment. I am not. Everything is just like getting cold and dead and dying, which beautiful too. But yeah, the white rose cake, and we're gonna start decorating.
I guess before we start decorating and diving into the Flora chapter, do you want to tell people who are watching who might not have their copy of the book yet how you divided the book up into the categories or chapters? Because Flora is one of the chapters, the second one. But what are some other chapters people can bake from or anticipate when they open the book?
So the book is divided into 6 chapters, and I originally wanted it to really be reflective of the seasons. So we start very early in the year with Evergreen, which is like the meeting between winter and spring, where you're getting like new life and offshoots, and it's very verdant and herbal. And so we start in Evergreen and we end in Smoke. So it takes you through the full year. I originally, like when I was writing it, I had it divided into 4 chapters, obviously like spring, summer, fall, winter. But the more I went down this process, the more I kind of discovered that I actually believe that there are 6 seasons, and they all kind of very much bleed into each other. And that's really what I wanted to convey, that, spring doesn't just start on one date and end on something else.
There's a really great flow in between the chapters. You start each chapter with a half a page like write up about what you can expect in that season, what kind of recipes you can anticipate on baking from the next few pages. And I feel like you connect it so well from Evergreen to Flora, and then to Orchard, and then to Smoke. It's just a really nice transition. It doesn't seem choppy at all, and it's really, really nice. Yeah. And I feel like the thing about your book that is my favorite part, like recipes aside, it's the writing. You have such a beautiful prose, and everything when I'm reading, it doesn't feel like I'm just reading words about the recipe, but it tells me about your inspiration behind each recipe and the book in general. So yeah, I'm really excited to share more from the book with everyone watching today. And yeah, whenever you want to start decorating, I'm ready to start decorating.
Well, you show me your flowers. Show me what you picked up. Amy got her flowers this morning. I got mine last night.
I got some leaf stems from my good friend. She has her own like flower company. They call it Flower Peddler, by the way. And I sent her a swatch of Thalia's Instagram feed. And I'm like, this is the color palette I'm going after. And then she delivered. So we have a bunch of roses. I made sure, I feel like one of the important things about decorating with flowers, especially the fresh flowers, is to make sure, obviously, you're not getting a poisonous flower. So I like to ask the florist that whether this flowers is safe to be put on cakes. Has it been sprayed with pesticides while it was being grown? So having a trusted florist, I feel like, is really important when you're decorating and baking with flowers. And yeah, I want to see your flowers now.
My flowers, I have a whole bunch. Hang on. This is going to be awkward to maneuver. Is that better? A little bit.
Yeah, you're good.
So I made 2 cakes. I made one, which is like, as you can see here, it's like the white rose cake from the book.
Yeah.
It's rose, lemon, white chocolate creme fraiche, Swiss meringue buttercream. But then I also did it with like this. I also did like a darker version using dark chocolate, all the same flavor still, but with dark chocolate. One of the things that I really love is this idea of like, obviously creating and creating cakes that are structured around seasons. And you write about that quite extensively in your book. And for me, like the white rose cake is very spring, but the darker one is very winter. So you can kind of like make the same recipe, but just switch out the white chocolate for dark chocolate or vice versa. Because I know some people really don't like white chocolate. Yeah. So.
But the white chocolate in this buttercream is like really subtle. It adds like a creaminess without like that caramely sweetness.
Yeah.
You associate white chocolate, it's really, really nice.
Yeah, and I find white chocolate just like so floral. Obviously, like depending on the kind of brand that you buy, I use Valrhona. I think that's Ivoire, which is in the 30%, maybe 35, something like that. And that is an 85% from Valrhona as well. So it's super dark, super biting and intense and bitter, which I love. So there are places for both of them. And yeah, that's really what I wanted with this book is I kind of wanted to make sure that you can like be in spring, but you can also pick it up and make a recipe from like the winter chapters and things like that as well. That there was a tremendous crossover. Like I wasn't going to send you out and go foraging for flowers, that kind of thing. But yeah, tell me about your book, because I know that you also had the same thought process in mind when you were writing and
my book, Blooms and Baking, it came out last April, so it's almost been 1 year since it came out. It's all about baking and decorating with flowers, how to incorporate florals into everyday sweets. So my book is divided into 2 parts, like all the recipes that include a floral component and how to decorate with flowers, whether it's fresh flowers, and I give tips on how to clean the flowers when you're decorating with them, and a big section on how to pipe buttercream flowers. So in case you have trouble or you don't want to do fresh flowers on a cake, I teach you how to pipe all different types of flowers on a cake. And it's recipes first and then tutorials next. And it was lots of fun creating the book. Like your book, originally I wanted to do spring, summer, fall, winter, and divide up the chapters that way and focus on seasonal flowers for each chapter. But the more I worked on it, like the spring and summer chapters had a lot of stuff going on. There were lots of recipes, a lot of seasonal flowers and fruits to work with. But then when I got to the fall and winter, the recipes seemed more like forest. Like I'm trying to add a floral element to a more winter baked good. So afterwards, we decided to not divide the book that way and go based on the category of the dessert. So it goes from cakes to cream puffs to cookies to pies and tarts and other sweets.
So if like obviously if you were going to decorate or think about creating like a winter cake, what would you do to incorporate florals into that? Would you be using like dried flowers, or I think you talk a lot about preserving as well? Like I think your book is like the first one that I proper saw talk about like preserved cherry blossoms and things like that, like super Asian ingredients, I think as well, that we kind of grew up with and know about. But are really only becoming popular now. I think that is such like a unique point.
Yeah, I feel like some flowers, such as like elderflower or lilacs, have such a short blooming season. Like elderflower blooms for around like 2 to 3 weeks of the entire year. So what I like to do to make the flavor of elderflower available all year round is to turn it into like elderflower syrup or into elderflower sugar. Something that's more shelf stable that I can keep in the fridge and keep in the pantry, and that I can reach for any time of the year, and pair it with maybe darker, like richer flavors, and using that floral element to kind of brighten it all up. So I talk a lot about that in the book. And like you said, cherry blossoms are great. Not a lot of people know that cherry blossoms are edible. You can actually, at like specialty Asian stores, you can buy a lot of like pickled cherry blossoms, or it's packed in sugar just to make it last longer. And it's really easy to incorporate that flavor into cakes or cookies, depending on how you want to fold into the batter or like press into the dough and things like that.
No, even entirely. I used cherry blossom puree. I like imported it in from Japan last year because it's super hard to find here. And I tried to work it into an ice cream and it wasn't working. So I want to see.
I found the most success with it I found that a lot of in Japanese like confectionery and baking, a lot of the cherry blossom flavor is incorporated with like a red bean paste or a white bean paste, and using that bean paste as the vehicle for the flavor. So I found more success using that as like a layer between 2 cake layers, or fold it into a whipped cream to make a cherry blossom whipped cream. And
do you think that the red bean distracts from the overall flavor profile, or does it actually accentuate it because it gives it more body?
I feel like it gives more body, and it makes it more approachable, because some people don't love like a floral flavor, thinking it's very soapy, like it's too like like if you're eating soap, or it's
like lavender is such like a good example with that. Like I think as well, because like my grandmother's soaps are like lavender, so that just like reminds me of like that. It's really hard, and so balance is obviously important, and I think you write about that as well, about like incorporating like notes of like citrus into just to cut through that overwhelming perfume.
And I feel like one of the most important things to note when you're flavoring with flowers or florals is to start with a little amount and to add more if you think it needs more. Like for example, your white chocolate rose buttercream, like you suggest starting with a tablespoon, and like if you know you don't like that much florals, you can reduce it to half a tablespoon. If you love florals, increase it to a tablespoon and a half, and it's very easy to play around with. You just have to start small and then like add more and more until you reach a point where like, you know, this is my ideal rose water amount.
I was like, when I was making this, I started at like 3 a.m. this morning, and I was like doing the Swiss meringue buttercream, and I was like, I put a tablespoon of this in, like it's a lot. And I mean, I really love the flavor, of course, but different brands as well vary in their strength. A lot of people don't necessarily, I think when you're starting to work with flowers, don't necessarily think about, so you know, start small and then build up. But let's start decorating while we have time.
Are you decorating your white chocolate one or your dark chocolate one? Are we matching today, or are you going more winter?
Well, I think we look pretty similar right now, so I'll go dark. You go white. I'll go dark because you're in spring and I am not.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll let you grab your cake first.
I'm gonna move the chair out of the way. Sorry, this is really awkward. All right.
Do you usually have a go-to technique when you're decorating flowers? Do you start with the bigger blooms first, and then, or do you start from the back and then work your way to the front? I want to hear your technique. You always make it look so natural, and I'm like, it's like you intentionally but unintentionally sprinkle the petals. I'm like, how did you do that?
I don't have a technique, honestly.
Yeah.
It's just basically like what looks good to me, to my eye. Yeah, I think it's really hard to have a technique and just to kind of formulaically do it when it's, you know, creative and organic. And I kind of like when it's a little bit messy and rustic. I love texture. I was talking about this to my good friend Claire, like her cakes are really known for like that really kind of textured finish.
Yeah.
I left this one very messy and a little bit exposed. I don't know. Can you guys see that very well?
Yeah,
okay.
I can see your entire cake stand.
Really?
Yeah. Like, I mean the top part where it matters.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, this will do. So yeah, I think I'm going to work with darker colors today.
Okay.
Yes. So
I'm going to do mostly light pinks and creams with maybe a pop of the darker pink, but who knows? I feel like when I decorate flowers, I can never really plan it. I have to place it on the cake and see if it looks good, and I'll move things around.
Yeah, because I like your style. You always leave it very exposed, like mine. And I love like proper frosted, like piped cakes. Props to anyone that can do it. I can't. I just kind of just like slap it all on and go from there. That is my approach. And then I think it's cute. All right. So
okay, I'm gonna start. My general technique is that I like to start with the larger blooms in the back, and then start to use the smaller flowers, like baby's breath or anything that has like a smaller petal and there's more of them. I use it to fill the gaps. So I just cut off a really big cream colored rose. I'm gonna start with that, probably in the back. I gave these flowers a quick rinse on cold water to the outside, just like because I know I'm putting it on the cake. So I'm just gonna start. And I think the nice thing about using flowers is that you can move it anywhere.
Do you just place it straight on? So like, I'll show you guys. Right here I have like a glass filled with buttercream to kind of paste them on, because sometimes when you're working with flowers and you're cutting them, you can get like a lot of residual sappiness or
I just so if I know that the flower has a bit more sap or like it's a bit more like liquidy, I tend to use floral tape, and I wrap the stem after I cut it, and then I put it in. If I'm using a really big flower that has a hard time staying stable on the cake, I will usually take the flower, and then I'm tempted to like put the toothpick into the stem and then stab it in so it stays in place and doesn't like fall off when you move the cake. But I don't think I'll need that today. The buttercream is quite like fluffy and it can probably hold the blooms. So I'm just gonna be like tucking some of the smaller flowers underneath the bigger rose I'm working with, and kind of build like a crescent shape so it cascades from like a taller point into like a lower point in the front. So you see both the back and the front when you're looking at from like this side.
The problem that I find when I'm decorating cakes is that it's always kind of, or like even when I'm like painting, it's always hard to know when to stop.
Yeah.
Like I just find myself like having to pull back a little bit because, you know, you can keep going and it gets cluttered. And is there a certain amount or like a number for like, you know, what's that? Did you end up doing a 6-inch cake or a 5-inch?
I did a 6-inch.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
I love the height of a cake, and I feel like when I do a 6-inch, there's more height versus like the width. But then the nice thing about 8-inch cake, I think the recipe in the book says use an 8-inch pan, is that you get more surface area to work with. You can put more flowers, you can put more decorations on it. That's what I love about an 8-inch cake.
Yeah. Something that I learned as well, like when I was in art school, is that the eye kind of sees in uneven numbers as well. So when I'm decorating, I will never really exceed using like one massive bloom in the middle, or I'll go 3 or I'll go 5. Rarely will I have enough space to work with 7, but generally stick in thirds, 1, 3, 5. That's not that uneven numbers.
And I feel like never, when you're working with flowers, especially the larger flowers, never be afraid to peel back some petals if you feel like it's too big for your cake. Sometimes when you get roses from the store, they're huge and they're like in full bloom. I would like peel back maybe 1 or 2 layers of the flower before I use it on the cake. So it's not as overwhelming when you're looking at it.
I like all like the broken stuff. Like oftentimes, like what I'll do is I'll photograph my flowers first or film them and I'll break them up, put them on the cake. It just looks a little bit more.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. I have like this big bunch of the purple and I'm just like cutting it into 4 smaller bunches so I can scatter it on the top. So it doesn't look like when you look at the cake, you just only, your eyes gravitate to one part of the cake because all the purple is there.
And would you like kind of decorate the stand as well, or would you're gonna?
I think it depends. If I have like, if it's more like I'm only using whites and greens, I might be tempted to do the sides as well, just to add more like layers and texture to it. But if I'm working with a variety of flowers and colors already, I might just stick to the top, and so it doesn't look as messy.
Yeah. Are there any colors that you avoid when you're decorating? I know.
I just love like the pinks, the pastels, and like the more like muted colors. I have a hard time working with the brighter colors, especially in the autumn when it's a lot of like oranges and yellows. I feel like it's a bit distracting. So then I like to actually, during the colder months when the flowers are more like darker, more intense in color, I like to stick with foliage and lots of greens. And I feel like greens are a great way to decorate like a winter cake. Just having like a rich dark chocolate cake with lots of green. I love that look.
I have right here, I got these magnolia leaves, which I think is pretty nice. I mean, it's too big. Like if I was
an entire cake.
Very adventurous, and then call it art, and
Did you start decorating yet? I feel like you've been talking. I just see your decorating. I was like, I'm done.
No, I struggle to do 2 things at once, if you haven't noticed. So like trying to decorate a cake and then like hold up a conversation is very difficult. So I'm just gonna watch you and your beautiful work while I ask a million questions.
Okay, I'll let you decorate and maybe I might ask you some questions while you're decorating, but probably easy questions so you don't have to like pause.
Okay.
When we're decorating to answer me. How about that?
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
I don't even know what I'm doing. I haven't even thought about it. I really like playing with like texture and color. So these are very cool. They're a little bit, don't even ask me what they are. But yeah, they're a little bit different as well. I always find myself going for the same thing, the same full kind of bloom, and I don't know, I'm going to do it a little bit differently today. It's really hard to like decorate and like try and see this side when you're
I know. I'm like looking at my phone, hoping that it looks good, is translating well when I flip it over to the front.
Yeah. Hang on.
Yeah. I love using like the greenery and kind of bending a little so it curves with the edge of the cake. I feel like that always looks really natural and it just adds a lot of texture to the sides of the cake that might look like, I don't want to say boring, but so it's just not a flat surface on the side.
Yeah. I like all of this like dead stuff as well. I picked this like at the front of the house. Like if I was brave enough, which I'm not brave enough to do on camera, I would kind of like wrap this around and then like tie it.
Yeah.
From there, maybe I'll use a bit. Yeah. And then do the whole cake. That's like a perfect winter cake. Like a lot of these like dead vines and like that.
While you're decorating, why don't you tell me about your favorite, I don't want to say your favorite recipe in the book because I feel like that's going to be hard. what's the 3 recipes you think people are going to make first?
Oh, easy. It'll be chocolate chip cookies, probably the buckwheat ones, I would say.
Yeah.
Brownies. I have 3 brownies in there. Each of them are very, very different because I like different textured brownies. So one's like a shiny crust, one's coated in like cocoa, and the other one is not a different type of shiny crust. So the smoked flat cell brownies at the end, maybe banana bread, I would say as well. But yeah, I hope people kind of choose ones as well that, make them a little bit uncomfortable and aren't necessarily ones that you would pick. I think my favorite recipe right now would be the coffee parfait. Like I love like cold, dulcet, creamy desserts. My favorite, I'll always pick ice cream over a slice of cake. So that will generally tell you what kind of book I'm working on next.
Yeah. I've made 3 recipes from the book so far. I got a copy in advance, so I didn't make them all like today of the book release, but I made obviously this white rose cake. I did the rose walnut chocolate chip cookies, which are so good. And I made the black forest cookies, which were so fudgy, so decadent. And it's exactly like a slice of black forest cake transformed into cookie form. So that was also very lovely. And I really looking forward to making the marbled loaf cake that you have, because the photos of it are so good.
Yeah. The marble cake is an interesting one. That really got, I don't know if you saw like on social media, they got so popular like over the past marble cakes. I think very like retro. Like when I was in Paris, everyone was doing marble cakes everywhere.
Yeah. Do you think the types of baked goods that are popular on your blog or on your Instagram, like what type of like for example, cookies? Do you think cookies have been more popular in the past year? Or do you think cakes have stayed popular? I know you specialize in the cookies with the giant puddles, but do you find more people making this year just because it's like kind of something that's easy to be small batch, something that's easily shareable versus like a large occasion cake?
Yeah, large occasion cakes are not popular, but they do well, I think, because they're very kind of like decadent to look at, very pretty. But yeah, I think when I want something sweet, I want something generally that's fast and that I'm comfortable with, and that just like easily. Cookies are that, but I kind of like to put inventive spins on them, so you're not just necessarily getting a chocolate chip cookie, but you're getting something with like a little more complexity and depth. Yeah.
I found that like this past year, the cookie recipes have been doing extremely well compared, because before I feel like it was cakes, the really like decorated, elegant, kind of dramatic cakes were doing really well, really popular, and a lot of people were making them and tagging me in it. But this year it's been cookies. And especially when you give information on how to freeze the dough or how to freeze the cookies so you don't have to eat the entire dozen at the same time, that has been really popular on the blog and in the book.
Kind of like an entire dozen at one time. Yeah. So look at these guys. I just found these like little dead ones out in the garden. Super cute. And they match the color profile of this I'm going very brown. This is unlike me right now.
Yeah, I like the movement it has.
Yes, that's also really important for food. And like when you're taking photos, especially, that's something that I'm always trying to capture, is how can you kind of make something look like it's jumping out at you.
Yeah.
You also, that's something we have in common. You also photographed your own cookbook, which is very, very difficult. So
it's like you're always contemplating, do you need the progress shot? Will the viewer appreciate seeing the step by step? Or can I just photograph the product at the end? And I feel like I was so stressed out about capturing both the process and the final product. I ended up spending so much more time photographing the book, and like of course I did incorporate the progress for some of the recipes, but I definitely overshot everything, because every recipe I shot like 500 photos, and I'm just like, why would I need 500 photos for one recipe?
Yes, very much me too. Like, I did not approach this book like with a methodical, thought out plan, which I think is really obvious when I was photographing it. Like, I shoot one recipe and then see how it would fit with the other photos, and then one of them would kind of stand out and not really work, and then I have to go back and reshoot. And you know what it's like when you're and developing recipes, it can take up to like 12, 15 times to get one thing correct. And original recipes as well, it's really difficult. And
did you find the recipe developing or the photography or the writing the hardest?
The writing, because by the end of the day I just had nothing left to give anymore. Like, I really struggled. I kind of wish I had gone back and perhaps done longer head notes or given a little bit more of myself, but I just didn't have it in me. Like, and at the end of the day, the focus, yes, it's also me and my book and my story, but it's also very much about the food, which is what you're buying. So I really wanted to make sure that that element was perfect, and that if I had to perhaps sacrifice and hold a little bit more back on myself now, so that I can give more in the future.
I feel like you have a really good balance between talking about the food and talking about yourself, relating to the food and the recipe itself. I like bookmarked so many like quotes and like blurbs in your cookbook. I know it's gonna make you cringe. Do you mind if like I read like a tiny bit of it out loud, just because I love it so much?
Okay.
You're giving me that look. I'm like, I bookmarked it with like a floral bookmark just so it's more on brand. But I wanted to share the first paragraph from Flora, the second chapter where the cake is from. And it's a really nice mix between your personal experience with florals and you talking about what the reader can expect in this chapter that use a lot of floral flavors in the baking. So, yeah. Have you had someone read your words back to you yet? Am I the first one?
No,
okay. Okay.
But I don't know, babe.
So I'm reading from the first page of Flora. It's super beautiful. Lots of full page color photos, which I really appreciate. But then you also artfully have some that are like smaller photo in the corner of the page or on the top of the page. Everything's very intentional, and I really, really appreciate it. But yeah, here's the paragraph that I love. There are things we can learn from flowers, how beautiful it is to bloom and flourish, then wither, returning to the soil to grow once more. It's work, but they do it and show us how to do it too. For it takes strength to flower and even more to bear it. I know that well. The meaning of my name is to blossom, and if there's anything it's taught me, it's that blossoming can hurt. And then after that paragraph, you talk about how flowers signify spring and what kind of flowers you've been working with in these chapters. And it's just so beautiful. Like every recipe and the prose is so delicate, just like the flowers that you're using in the recipe. And it goes so well. And I can't wait to make the lavender scones in this chapter. They look so delicious. And like seriously, look at these photos, guys. They're like just flowers, 2 pages in color. Where did you take these photos? From your home garden, or did you go somewhere to find these flowers?
I did not have the gardening skills to grow flowers like that. I took them all over the place. I spent a lot of time in Tasmania, so a lot of that was like traveling around, just kind of like pulling over on the side of the road when I would see something and just shooting it. But that was like really important as well, is just to be able to curate that sense of unfolding and journey and focus. Like you said, the lavender scones, like I don't even have a photo for that. I think I took it out because I wanted the focus to be very much on the flowers and leave a little bit up to people's Congratulations.
Yeah, I saw that you did that as well for like the orange blossom creme caramel, where you showed the blossoms instead of the actual dessert, and it just evokes this really romantic feeling, which I think you would get when you make and eat that dessert.
Yeah, the photo was also really rubbish. Not gonna lie. I cut it off. Creme caramel. Try to photograph that. Not happening. Sure, you know, like any kind of gelatinous dessert is an absolute nightmare.
Yeah. I have one question. I feel like we're probably running low on time because I see that we're about to start Q&A, but I have one more question before we start Q&A. So when you have recipes like the white rose cake, how do you decide to shoot something like this, where it's like a half-eaten slice, super beautiful, instead of the whole cake? Because I feel like when people look at cake recipes, they usually post up the full cake as like the main image. So how do you decide between, I'm going to show us a half-eaten slice versus what someone can expect when they have a fully frosted cake?
I don't necessarily want, of course I want my recipes to work out and for you to know what you're doing, but I also feel like the best food that I've had in my life and the best things that I've like made generally when I have absolutely no idea what I'm doing. And so I just wanted to, I kind of, want to guide you in the right direction a little bit and with my words and with the photo, but at the same time, I want to hold back and I want to let you do it. It's not necessarily about me kind of telling you this is how it should be. It's how, very much intrinsic with how, how it's going to come out through you.
Yeah.
I want you to explore and I want you to, play and change up the chocolate or, do something a little bit differently. It's not a Thalia Ho book anymore. It's very much about, I've put it out into the world and I want people to be able to like take it with them and carry it with them and go on their own journey of sweetness, which is really what it's all about for me. Was that a nice answer?
That was the perfect answer. That was very, very great. Okay, are we starting the Q&A? I feel like you're trying to flag me down to be like,
no. I almost hate to interrupt, but we've had a bunch of questions come in and I want to make sure that we get to a couple of them because the audience is just loving this. I think we are all loving this live decoration right now. This is wonderful. So if you don't mind, I'll go ahead and ask a couple of these audience questions. So Cindy has said, Thalia, your blog and book both quote literature often. Is there anyone you consider to be your literary ancestors, writers who directly influenced your writing style? If no one, what works of creative writing stick out to you as one that reflect or influence the way you approach food?
Yeah, that's a very complicated question. There have been so many people and there will continuously be so many people. As I continue to like grow and evolve, my style changes and what I'm reading and who I'm drawn to changes as well. It's very much like with anyone, you read kind of like, I think in line with your life experience and what you're going through at the time. So I started off very I like the classics. So I started off, Virginia Woolf, Sylvia Plath, very kind of like intense. A lot of the writers that I gravitate to are generally women, but I like starting to get into male writers a little bit more. I really like Henry Miller now. I started off very heavily influenced by Aeneas Nin, very heavily influenced and reading a lot of Charles Baudelaire at the moment, which explains all the evil, flowery tattoos.
They're beautiful.
Yeah, thank you. And I got to, when I was in Paris, I went to his grave. And so just there are so many people and so many things that and generally what I find with literature and when I'm doing my readings and my translations is that it informs my choices with my food and kind of what I'm going to make and how I see things. So as you can see right now, we've gone a little bit dark and stormy and intense, and that's very much kind of like what I'm reading in the morning and the season that I'm in. Yeah.
Right. Awesome. So Patricia has said, congratulations on the book. It is a delightful feast. And she is wondering how you came up with these inspiring names of the chapters. So for anybody that doesn't know yet, the chapters are titled things like Evergreen, Bramble, Orchard, Smoke. I'd also love to hear a little bit more about the names of the chapters.
Yeah, so they're very reflective of what I would consider to be the most salient points that stand out to me in a season. There are a lot of like other kind of ways that I could have, a lot of other kind of names and directions I could have taken with each chapter, but those to me were the strongest. And to be honest, like I don't even remember how I got to them. I kind of feel like my whole life was training for this, and it was always just kind of there. Like I didn't just sit down and go, okay, I'm going to write 6 chapters now, and then I'm going to try and find out which name fits with each. Like it very much just kind of came organically. So yeah, there wasn't really any kind of rhyme or reason to it. And then once
Sorry, you hear the siren in the back. I live like a block away from the fire station, so that's like the soundtrack of my life. I'm always hearing sirens, so sorry for the interruption.
Okay, that is totally fine. So let's see, I'm trying to sift through some of these. Do you, and this could be a question for both of you, do you primarily shoot with natural light or artificial light?
Natural, always natural. Yeah. I really admire people who do artificial light because it's challenging, but in terms of my aesthetic and Amy's aesthetic, it's soft and it's delicate and it's feminine, and harsh light, yeah, it lends off a different energy. So always natural light. Yeah.
I'm natural light as well. I try to time it. I kind of organize my baking schedule around when I can shoot. Like I love shooting from noon to 2 p.m. That's where it looks best in my apartment. Mm-hmm. So I always bake in the morning, let it cool, and then start doing the photos around noon. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. Artificial light is it's really difficult to do and to do well. So natural light is always
as well. It kind of gives off a very studio vibe, which for our work it's a little bit different, but yeah.
How about, so Kristen has asked, how many iterations does a recipe go through before finalizing?
It depends. When I'm kind of writing a recipe, what I'm looking at is composition and ratios of, fat, dry, et cetera, and then playing from there. It is a science. Amy writes that in her introduction as well, that it is very much a sweet science, and it can take a really long time to get there. Obviously, some things are more easy than others. Cakes I find them easy, but some people maybe not. Frozen desserts are a little bit harder. But yeah, it can take, generally, it took me maybe 3 to 5 reiterations on average to get something correct, and then testing on top of that. But you can go up to 12 times on something. Yeah, and try doing that 140 times for each recipe in a book.
Was there anything that didn't make the cut that you thought would, or just didn't go quite as you planned?
Yeah, so I wrote 140 recipes for this book, and we always knew we would cut down quite a lot. So we ended up with about over 95. So there was a lot that didn't go into it, and basically what at the end, the decision was just, what is the most aesthetic and what is the most delicious and what is going to tell the story of the book the strongest. Yeah, I wish I could share a lot more. Maybe I will. Maybe I'll put some of them on the blog.
Yeah, you should put on the blog some outtakes that you really love and you wish could have made the blog.
That's a great idea. Or save them for your next book too.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to know if there are any flowers, if there are some flowers that work better than others for decorating, or if there are others that just don't work at all because they wilt too quickly, or some that you always use, your kind of go-tos.
Amy, do you want to hit that one straight off?
Sure. I feel like flowers that have really delicate petals, or a lot of petals that come in clusters, tend to wilt easily. Hydrangeas usually tend to wilt really quickly. So for any flower in general, when it comes to decorating, I recommend decorating just before you're going to serve it or present it. Like, don't decorate it the night before, because the next day it will look really different than when you finished it the previous night. Like, so I wouldn't recommend decorating a cake more than like 6 or 7 hours prior to serving it, just because you want to look really fresh and very much like alive when you're presenting it to your family or your friends. But yeah, I feel like the flowers with like a sturdier stem tend to work really well. Or if you try to cut this, leaving more of the stem when you're placing on like the cake or like the baked good, it tends to like elongate the life of the blossom on your baked good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Good
Yeah.
tips. A couple of people have asked how, and I think you touched on this earlier, but a couple of people have wanted to know a little bit more about how important the brand or quality of your ingredients are. So things like flour, sugar, eggs. Is there anything that any ingredient that is extremely important and some that maybe aren't as much?
Yeah, definitely. I think it all depends on like what you're making. Obviously, like the more simple the recipe, the less kind of places you have to hide. So a lot of the time when I'm doing chocolate work and I know that my chocolate is going to be the forefront, I'm going to go for not necessarily a cooking or a baking chocolate. I hire a grade 1, a Grand Cru, Valrhona, or something a little bit more highbrow, and I think it tastes better too.
I feel like echoing what you said, like if it's a very simple like ingredient list and you know every ingredient is going to be at the forefront of like the recipe, it's important to invest in a better quality ingredient. For example, if you're making like a shortbread that only has like butter, flour, sugar, vanilla, it's worth paying just a bit more to use like a vanilla bean or like a butter with a higher butter fat percentage, just because you'll be able to taste it and you don't have other flavors like the chocolate or like any flavorings can hide the lower quality butter. So I like to pick and choose when it comes to like using or spending more money on the expensive ingredients like butter. Like if I know it's a butter forward recipe, then I would definitely use something that has like a higher percent like butter fat.
Yeah, don't use shit butter. Oh, sorry.
Totally okay.
Like butter shouldn't be yellow. I mean, like the butters that I use are French butters and they're almost white. So again, with the shortbread thing, like go for something really, really good, but obviously go within your like means as well, like and what you're able to access. I mean, I wish we could all have like some sort of fancy French dairy aisle. It's not really possible. But yeah, I mean, we write recipes not based upon the ingredient at the end of the day and how much you're going to spend on something. We write them because we really believe that it's delicious the way it is and the way we've constructed it.
Yeah.
If like there's a kind of a note in the head note of the recipe that says, go for a chocolate or go do it. Yeah, do it.
Yeah. No, I think I've noticed that in both of your recipes that these are very accessible. These aren't for, I feel like you have a good range of some that are, perfect for maybe beginner bakers like myself. And then also maybe some more advanced, but there's also room there to kind of toy with the ingredients a little bit. Like you said, splurge sometimes, on the expensive chocolate if you're feeling that, or if it's important to you.
Whenever I make Thalia's cookies, I always splurge on expensive chocolate because I want the cookie to be about the chocolate. And like when you look at her photo, it's like her cookies are like 70% chocolate, 30% actual cookie dough. So when there's a recipe that's like that, I know I want to break up my Valrhona for it. And use the best quality chocolate I can, just because I can't disappoint Thalia by using a not as good chocolate.
It's funny because the chocolate is actually like my least favorite part of the cookie. Like I like the dough, I like eating the.
I actually love the dough so much. Like whenever I make chocolate chip cookies, I always at the end save one dough ball that I bake off that has no chocolate in it, and that's like my guilty pleasure. Like I don't show that to the world. Like one time I think I showed it once on like an Instagram story, and everyone was like, "That's what I do too." And I felt like so seen because I love the flavor. It sounds I love the flavor of the butter and the sugar together. And sometimes like the chocolate's a bit distracting. But yeah, I'm a cookie minus the chocolate purist sometimes.
I would agree with you on that, definitely.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to try to fit in 2 more questions here.
Okay.
So we have had a couple of people chat in and want to know a little bit about how you decided to pursue this in the way that you did. So I know you just recently graduated from law school, which is a huge achievement. And some people are just curious. So for example, Flora is asking, how did you find your way into baking? At what point did you decide that you would pursue it in the way that you have when you have had so many other creative passions and interests?
Yeah, so I think, well, it just happened very naturally. I think the largest influence would be my childhood. My grandfather always wanted to be a pastry chef, and all my grandparents are immigrants. So my grandfather escaped the war and he came to this country, and he couldn't really pursue that dream of becoming a pastry chef. That he bakes every day, and he still does. So my whole childhood as well, like being European but also Chinese, was very food focused, and a lot of crossover as well between like inspiration and flavor. And so I saw all different kinds of things. So it happened very naturally. I was cooking and then I just began to share it. But the law side really took a back seat. Like, I graduated high school when I was 16, and then 2 months later, I was like running around trying to be a baby lawyer. If I had known that I could be successful doing other things, perhaps I would, thought twice about it. But 16, you're just not a fully formed person, or really giving anything 2 thoughts. So yeah, it took me a really long time to finish my degree, but it's done and the book is out. Now we're doing this.
Yeah, this is a big year.
It is.
So I think this is a really fun question to end on. And I'm going to ask this for both of you. So if you were a flower, which would you be and why?
I want to go first because I feel like Thalia might say my flower.
You can go ahead and claim it first.
I want to say a peony just because those are my favorite. And I know Thalia loves them too, because when she sent me her book, she used a peony scented perfume and sprayed the little note that she tucked into the book. And I feel like she's going to say that. So I want to go first. So it didn't seem like I was copying you, but I do love peonies.
But why, Amy?
Their scent is so beautiful, and I just love like that there's so many layers to the flower. I just call myself like multi-layered. But yeah, there's so many layers, there's so many petals, and I feel like every time you peel back a layer, it's still so full, and there's just like there's so much to the flower, and it's a lot more complex than just a single bloom.
Yeah, those are beautiful. All right, sorry, Thalia, if she took your answer. You could answer the same thing.
I was going to, but I'm glad you went with the peony, because I would definitely agree that personality choice for you. I think I would be a thistle. I love thistles, and they're very used to harsh treatment, and they look a bit daunting, but they're so striking, and they're resilient, but also, I don't know, I kind of gravitate towards the thistle a lot more. I
love that answer. Yeah, they're beautiful. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I think we are all out of time. I'm so sorry if we didn't make it to your question, but we did just pop the links in the chat for anybody who's interested in purchasing either Wild Sweetness or Blooms in Baking. And we just want to say a huge thank you to Thalia and to Amy and to everybody watching. This has been such a fun event. And I will personally just request a close-up photo of these cakes.
Gosh, I'm mad that I didn't even get around to finish.
Maybe on Instagram stories or something.
Yeah, while you're talking, I added some gold leaf to it just because I feel like it always makes it pop. So hopefully it'll show in the photo when I send it to you afterwards.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, everybody. I've got the raspberry blondies on my grocery list. I've got those ingredients on my grocery list for the week, and I hope everybody loves the book and tries all the recipes and decorates with flowers. This has been a lot of fun, really inspiring and really creative. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. Have a good night, everyone.
You too. Bye.